Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about a very important topic that many of you have requested I make a video about, which is the financial plan that I created to basically feel a bit more secure financially when I left my 9-to-5 job. So the 4 topics we're going to cover start with, first is just going to be the key things, important pieces that you need to consider before putting in your resignation notice at your job. Next are just my overall suggestions and thoughts and tips in terms of making a financial plan to actually quit your job. Then I'm going to actually go through my personal situation and actually screen share and show you guys my budget and kind of where I was financially when I quit. And then lastly, which I consider to be the most important one here, is discussing the recovery time when you decide to quit your job. I will talk about that a little bit more later, so make sure you stay tuned because I really think that is the key component to actually make leaving your 9-to-5 job overall worth it for you mentally and physically. So let's just jump right into it, starting with the key things to consider when leaving your job. A few of these tips I actually got from other videos that I personally watched when I was deciding whether or not to leave my job, and the last one is a personal one that I wanted to share with you guys from my own experience. So the first thing to consider, which maybe seems obvious, but if you're in a job that provides you with any type of health insurance, I would make sure you consider that when leaving, because the cost of health insurance can be really high. Now, if you don't have any income because you left your job, there's a chance that you might be able to get a lower cost health insurance plan, but I would do your research basically and consider this and consider your own health. And I don't suggest this to anyone else, but I actually have been out of my job for a month and haven't even signed up for a new health insurance plan because besides the fact that I get colds all the time, like I talked about in other videos, I don't have any underlying medical conditions that are going to cause me to seriously need to use health insurance to save a bunch of money. So for me, it just made sense for now to not get health insurance, which I will be getting health insurance soon. I was too overwhelmed, honestly, to kind of figure this one out before I left. All I knew is that overall, I'll be okay if I don't have health insurance. If anything happens, my company is required to allow me to continue my current coverage that I have at my company. The price is extremely ridiculously high, and I would never sign up for that insurance if I had a choice. But if something happens to me within 90 days of my last day of work, I'm able to continue my coverage and sign back up for it immediately and start using that. I'm basically waiting the 90 days until I know that I would have to actually go apply for new coverage, and I wouldn't be able to just easily press a button pretty much and say, hey, I want to continue this coverage and sign back up. So if anything crazy happens to me in the next 3 months, I'll use my current coverage. If not, I'm gonna have to find new insurance. Okay, moving on to the second one, and that's regarding your 401k contribution that may be matched by your company, or maybe they put in contributions for you. My company put in a 10 or 15% 401k contribution. Whether or not I input any money, they automatically put that into a 401k for me. So the thing to consider here is whether or not that is fully vested whenever you're deciding to leave your job, especially if you've been there for a short period of time. I'd only been at my company for 1 year when I left, but my company's 401k contributions are immediately fully vested. So as soon as that goes into the account, it's fully vested, and that means basically that it's mine. So they aren't going to take it back from me if I leave my job. Honestly, a lot of companies are not fully vested and there is a vesting period. I'm not super familiar with this. So long story short, I would just do your research, try to look into any of the offer letters that you were given from your company or any other materials you have regarding the investment contributions that they might put in for you, and make sure that you consider that when leaving, if the amount that goes into your 401k is something that you're considering as like a fail-safe backup plan for your financial situation. And then the last one, which is my own personal experience that I wanted to share, is to just consider if you have any bonus payments coming out soon. Think about whether or not this bonus payment is needed for you financially or not, because a lot of companies will only give you your bonus payment if you're still employed the day that the payment is posted. I would just consider this when deciding what day to leave. For me, I wasn't really sure whether or not my company was going to give me my bonus, and I actually left 3 days before my bonus payment posted, and I did not receive a bonus payment. And at the end of the day, for me, I really felt that I didn't want to specifically wait until after the payment posted to leave my job, because I just didn't really feel good about that myself. Overall, I would just really consider this for yourself and decide whether or not you would want to wait until after you receive the payment and then immediately leave your job, or just kind of how you feel about that yourself. I think that's a very personal decision, and just make sure you consider whether or not you're going to have that money whenever you're doing your financial plan like we talk about next. So I think that's a great segue into the next part of this video, which is my suggestions and tips on how to create your own financial plan for leaving your 9-to-5 job. So the first piece to consider is how much much money you want to have saved up, how many months of expenses you want to have saved. The general rule of thumb that you'll probably hear from many other videos, or if you Google this concept, is to have 3 months of expenses saved before leaving your job. Now, in my opinion, this is a very personal decision that you need to make. And I think when people consider the 3 months expenses, they're considering their current expenses. And there's a lot of ways to actually reduce your expenses after you leave your job that you might not have already thought of. So before calculating that amount that you should have saved, I would consider the following. What areas of your expenses are going to just naturally change now that you're not working your 9-to-5 job? Is it transportation costs, gas? Maybe it's eating out costs. Basically, for me, what that meant was anything that was a convenience that I was paying money for because I was busy and stressed for my current job. Those were the things that actually very quickly changed after leaving my job, and those expenses dropped dramatically. The next one is areas of your expenses that you can make a change yourself. These ones may not be as intuitive, or I guess they're intuitive, but they wouldn't just change on their own. You need to consciously make a choice to change these. So to me, the biggest and most obvious one is whether or not you can now move to maybe a cheaper location because you're not working your 9-to-5 anymore. Maybe now that you don't need to commute as far, you're able to move. Overall, just being able to move somewhere cheaper that has a lower cost of living is probably my number one tip when you're debating leaving your job. Obviously, this isn't always possible, and there's some things to consider when it comes to this as well, but I'll touch on that in 1 minute. Before I jump into that, I want to continue down a list of areas where you can kind of cut your expenses back to lower your monthly expenses. So the next one would be canceling any subscription services. So if you have subscription services for Amazon Prime or some type of delivery service, whether it's food delivery, grocery delivery, anything that's a monthly expense or a coming up yearly expense that you can cancel is going to reduce your monthly expense rate. The next one, which I think many people would not consider, is learning to coupon for a lot of your personal hygiene items or any of your home items like paper goods. I actually did this back when I was in college. When I lived in Florida, I learned to coupon at CVS, and I am able to get a lot of free items at CVS. There's a lot of great channels out there that actually talk about kind of how to coupon and the best ways to go about it, and they actually tell you all like the weekly deals and give you breakdown sheets. So I'll link some of those channels down below that I actually watch. I personally don't really spend that much on personal items, specifically hygiene items like toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, all of those types of things. I really don't spend a lot of money on. It's more the paper goods that I have a harder time kind of couponing in bulk to prepare ahead of time, but that's something that brings us right into the next one, which is to learn to shop at cheaper grocery stores. A big one that you could do is start shopping at Walmart, for example, because their prices are a lot lower, or shopping at Aldi if you don't already do so. There's a lot of cheap grocery stores out there that will really reduce your grocery bill, and a lot of stores out there that sell paper goods and other products for a much lower price or larger bulk. So, you could go to Costco to get your toilet paper and paper towels, and also consider what items you can cut out of your routine. If you currently use like a 10-step Korean skincare routine, can you cut that down for now while you're not working to have lower expenses overall? A lot of the things that we get used to doing when we have these corporate jobs or yearly salaries are really just luxuries if you think about it, and a lot of them can really just be cut out, even if it's for a time being while you're trying to get yourself back up on your feet. And the last thing that you can cut out is cutting out any vacations or travel plans that you might have. Now, this one probably seems really obvious to most, like why would you be going on a vacation if you don't have a job? Like, don't do that. But sometimes we have to travel, or there's people that we need to go see. And my biggest suggestion here, and something that changed for me now that I'm not working my job, is when I was working my job, if I needed to go back to Florida to visit my family, I would try to find the most convenient flight times, and I would pack as much as I wanted, pay for bags, whatever. But now that I am not working my 9-to-5, we're a lot more flexible when it comes to when we travel, and we even considered the option of driving to save money if flights were expensive at the time we wanted to travel. We're actually going back home to visit our family next month because my sister-in-law just had a baby, and of course we want to go see the baby. We found flights from Frontier for actually $30 round trip per person, and we decided to not get any bags. So we're just gonna pack extremely light, only wear a backpack, which is something I would not have done if I had the money to spend on a checked bag back in the day when I had my job. The important thing here is to just plan how much expenses you want to have saved for, and any other things that you want to save for, whether it's a specific vacation or a specific item that you want to buy, whether it's for someone else or for yourself. Just make sure you think through those things and you're prepared for it either way, because I think with finances, the most stress stressful part comes from the unexpected. So as long as you know what to expect and you kind of have it planned out, you're not going to be stressed. So let's hop back over to the idea of moving somewhere cheaper, because there's a few key things that I want you guys to consider if this is something that is possible for you. Personally, for me and my husband, we only moved to DC for my job, but DC was never somewhere that we wanted to specifically live. So for us, when it comes to leaving, we feel pretty neutral about it, and we did consider moving right after I quit my job. And a few things that we considered to ultimately make the decision of whether or not to leave was, number one, how long our lease was and what the lease break fee was if there was a potential to break our lease. So we still had 7 months left of our lease after I quit my job. Our lease doesn't end until March, so actually that might be 8 months now that I think about it. For us, the lease break fee was equal to 2 months of rent, so that is almost, I think it was like $4,400 or something crazy, which we were not gonna spend $4,400 to break our lease. The only way to make this worth it would have been if our new place that we were able to move to was cheaper to the extent of $4,400 divided by 7 months, I think. Yeah, that's what I did. And the biggest thing that was a make or break for our decision was this final point that I wanted to make, which is consider the minimum wage if you're planning on working any job part-time or full-time that is going to be minimum wage. So my husband's job is actually a minimum wage job where he gets paid hourly and it's based off of the current minimum wage. He had been not working for the past 3-4 months at the end of me working my 9-to-5 job. So we didn't even consider his income when we decided whether or not I was going to leave. But what we did consider is if he does go back to work at some point, then how much money would he be able to make? The minimum wage in DC is $15 an hour, and I think he makes like $16 an hour at his job, versus Florida. When we lived back in Florida, I think he made $9 an hour at his job because the minimum wage there is like 8 something. So when you think about it that way, he's almost making twice as much money per hour working up here than he would be in Florida. And if he's working full time, that's quite a big sum of money to consider. And the other thing to consider is if you're doing anything like me where you're trying to do gig work after you leave your 9-to-5, highly check this out before you decide to do this if you're debating moving out of the place you're living. So I have been shopping for Instacart since I left my 9-to-5 job, and I also have been doing cat sitting on the app Rover, and both of those have high user base for the DC area, and I'm able to easily get shopping jobs from Instacart and easily get cat sitting jobs. I've already gotten 2 cat sitting jobs and I've only been on the app for like a month, and I get as many shopping jobs through Instacart as I want. There's a ton of shopping jobs through Instacart. Long story short, gig work availability is a factor that you should consider if you're thinking that you might do gig work after leaving your 9-to-5 for a little bit. My last suggestion or tip for you is to think about your backup plan. I really think this is probably the most important piece, because you can plan as much as you want, but say you are trying to just get another 9-to-5 job, you have no idea how long it's going to take you to find a new job if you haven't already lined one up, which, you know, the whole point of this video is if you don't have one lined up like I did, and you really want to consider, well, what happens if I can't find another salary job making, you know, X amount of money that you need to make to be able to continue whatever lifestyle that is you want? Or if you're trying to start a business, then you have to consider the fact that your business might not take off and it might not do well and you might not make money from that business. And then what are you going to do if these things happen? So in my situation, there's only 2 key factors that we considered to kind of figure out our backup plan. The first one was, were we able to financially make it through the end of our lease without defaulting on our lease? We didn't want to ruin our credit. We didn't want to get kicked out of our current apartment. So this was probably the most important one that we considered. And I'll talk a bit more about this whenever I show you guys my own personal finances and our budget. But we really just made sure that without a shadow of a doubt, there was some way that we were going to be able to pay our rent for the rest of our lease, that no matter what, that would be able to get paid. Whether that's if I did gig work every single day and Oliver worked 40 hours a week or whatever that meant, we just had to be 100% certain that our rent would be paid. And then the next piece is, do you have friends or family that would be able to let you live at their home if you aren't able to figure something else out when your lease ends? And the reason this is important is because something that a lot of people don't think about is when your lease does end, you're gonna have to show proof of income in some way. And this can be really difficult to do if you haven't gotten another job or if your business that you might be trying trying to start up is not making enough income yet, it might be hard to prove that you're able to afford this new apartment or home or whatever you're trying to do. So in general, it's important to consider, do you have somewhere to live once your current lease ends? For us, we have family that we could go live at their house if we really needed to for a short period or even long period of time, and that's really not the end of the world. To me, that's like the worst case scenario that could happen for me leaving my job, is that we pay through the rest of our year of rent and then we have to move in with family or friends. It's really the worst that could potentially happen. And genuinely to us, that doesn't sound too terrible. It's not my favorite option, but if it happens, it happens. And I would much rather be healthy mentally and physically and just have to live with some friends and family for a little bit. Okay, enough of the background. Those are all my tips and suggestions. But if you are here to learn about my specific situation, to see our budget, our financial breakdown, then let's get right into that. So for this piece, I'm going to be here and share my screen for you guys. Alrighty, let's get right into it. So to start out, I am basically showing you guys my YNAB account, which is You Need a Budget. It's this really great budgeting app. If you don't already use the budgeting app, you do have to pay a yearly fee for it that I had paid like, I don't know, a few months before I quit my job. And you know, if I'm able to afford it, I'll continue paying it. But if not, then I'll find a cheaper option. But this is a great system to budget your money. And I've used it for years and really loved it. Also, if you're in college, I think they do have a free college plan. Anyways, moving on. So to start, I'm just going to tell you guys my overall income that I was making. So if you haven't seen my other video, I was making $75,000 a year. A portion of that was going into my 401k account. And really overall, I think $60,000 a year was my like yearly salary. And then I would get like a 5K bonus per year. And then about 10K went into my 401k account per year. That's obviously pre-tax. Post-tax, what it looked like was I was making $1,750 every 2 weeks. So that's about $3,500 a month was my monthly income that I was making. So that's a little bit about the income background. Now, the next thing to talk about is expenses. So for me, the easiest way to look at this was to go to spending in the reports area. And then I came here because if you first look at this, you see average spending is $4,600 a month. And obviously that is over my income that I was making per month. And part of that makes sense because this is from January through June, which part of January, February, and March, I think Oliver was still working his job like 30 hours a week. So we were making more money. But if you look down at categories here, you see we have immediate obligations, quality of life goals, just for fun, true expenses, passion project, and hidden categories, which hidden categories were categories that I initially had in my budget that I wasn't going to use anymore, so I just hid them. If we jump over to budget, just to give you guys a quick look before I make a change to which categories are shown, you'll see here that we have credit card payments and debt payments, which moving besides that, we have immediate obligations, which these are the key components that are really important, as well as true expenses. The only other thing, and just for fun, that I would consider important is the dining out one, because we do spend a decent amount of money eating out. Part of this was also our anniversary dinner, which was like very expensive, hence why it's so high when we really should not be spending that much money. Quality of life goals are really just savings goals and things that we technically don't need to spend money on. And passion projects are things for my business or my YouTube channel that I've spent money on that also don't have to happen if we don't have the money for it. The last piece is with true expenses. I would take out home items as well as clothing, because those are things that are not necessary if we don't have the money for them. If we jump back over to reports and then we go back to categories, then I'm going to take out uncategorized transactions because I don't know what those are referencing. I'm also taking out student loan payments because it's been paused and we haven't been making any. Then I'm going to go through here and just look at which things I can take out. So I can definitely take out clothes. I can definitely take out coffee, taking out books. I'm taking out home items, and I am taking out gifts. I think everything else is things that I still would technically be paying for, even though they're things I might cancel. I had been paying for them, and they are expenses that if I don't cancel them need to be made. So I'm going to leave those. For just for fun, I'm going to currently just completely take that out. I'm also going to take out quality of life goals, take out Venmo transfers, and passion project, and hidden categories. So if we take all of those out, these to me are the only required expenses that we need to pay to live. So if we hit done, now we'll see that our average spend spending is $2,600 a month. Now, this is the number that I looked at when deciding how many months of expenses we wanted to have saved up. So for us, I decided on 3 months because that was just kind of the average. And I felt like 3 months was a good enough time for me to, number one, recover from burnout and kind of heal from working the job and being so stressed. Then number two, work on my YouTube channel, my business, anything I wanted to do on the side with that. And then at the end, if none of that works or I decide I don't want to do that, I had time to then look for a job and get hopefully hired at a new job. So 3 months was a good amount for us. Now, if we add back in dining out, it's going to be way higher because on average, we spent a lot of money eating out per month. But, now that we know we're not making money, the ideal situation is that we would be spending a lot less on eating out. So that brings it to $3,200. But that's why I ignored that one, because if we're really, really trying to cut it tight, we just will never eat out. Now we know that about $2,600, $2,700 per month is our required expenses. So now I just wanted to talk about our plan that we did have in place in terms of me leaving my job. And I want to be transparent to add this piece in because, overall, I didn't have any other job lined up. I didn't apply to any other jobs. I had no intentions of trying to figure out my next job before I quit my current job. I was way too stressed out to even consider that. So for us, the plan was basically no plan. I quit my job out of extreme exhaustion and stress, and then I had to basically start formulating a plan afterwards. The only thing I knew for certain is that we would be fine for 3 months. The last piece is our backup plan that we had financially. Like I said before, if this was our average spending, we have at least 3 months of living expenses currently. And if you look right here, this is our actual cash money that we currently have. We have almost $8,600 in cash money. If you look down here at the tracking, we have 2 investment accounts that have no penalty that I had created myself in Betterment that have a total of $5,600. And the only thing about these is that we would have to pay taxes on the gains that we made whenever we pay taxes next year. But we do have another $5,600 here, which was nice to know because $5,600 is basically another 2 months of spending, and we currently have a little bit over 3 months. So we have about 6 months almost of expenses that have no penalty, which 6 months from now is when our lease ends. So we're good till the end of our lease, even if we have to dip into these investment accounts that we have. And then lastly, the complete fail safe is we do have my 401k, which has a heavy negative impact in terms of the amount of taxes you have to pay on it and the penalty you get for taking this out before you retire. Worst comes to worst, if something insane happened, we do have $13,000 that we could take out of that 401k account. I forget I did calculate how much it would actually be post taxes and post penalties, but let's pretend it's half, even though it's not that dramatic, but it is a pretty dramatic amount of a penalty. But say it was half, we have almost $7,000 extra that we would be able to use if we absolutely had to, for literally with no other options. So with all of that in mind, we felt pretty good about where we were at, even if neither of us were working and neither of us made any more income until the end of our lease. So all of that was just a good indicator that for us, we were in a good place. We really don't want to touch any of this money though, obviously, but in general, I wanted to at least show you it because it shows that we did have a backup plan, and I think a backup plan is important in terms of your peace of mind. Say you don't have any investment accounts or you don't have any retirement fund that you can dip into. Another thing to consider is the assets that you have in your house or your home or wherever you live, any of your physical assets. So if you have the newest iPhone, could you sell that iPhone and buy an iPhone that's like 5 years old and make an extra $500 off that? Could you sell a TV that you have, any game systems, any computers, jewelry maybe? Is there anything that you could sell to make a little bit of extra money to hold you over in case of an emergency? And that's kind of the key word there. Obviously, I wouldn't suggest you to sell all of your possessions to be able to quit your job, but if you already have 3 months of expenses and you're just worried about what happens after that if you aren't able to find something else, then that's something to consider as well. But at the end of the day, I think that it's nice to know that you can make money doing gig work. I'm able to make almost $25 an hour doing Instacart. That is pre-tax, but still that's $25 an hour, which is not bad at all. And with cat sitting, I make $21 per visit, which if the visit is close enough, and usually the visits are about 30 minutes each, that's like $21 per hour as well. So both of those make pretty decent money. They have no requirement in terms of applying, and Instacart is the easiest one. As long as you can pass a background check, you can become a shopper pretty much within that week and start shopping. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the financial plan that we figured out and where we were at with our money. I hope that gives you guys a good picture of kind of the things we thought of. If there's anything you have questions about after looking at this, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Happy to answer any questions about our finances or anything that you see here. I'm pretty much an open book when it comes to this stuff. I don't have any issues sharing any of this information, so seriously, ask me anything you want to ask. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was, to me, the most important part of this video, which is your recovery plan. If you're quitting your job, there's a reason for it. Most of the time, we quit our jobs because we are severely burnt out, severely stressed, and extremely unhappy in our job. And as much as I would wish that we were able to just quit the job and immediately feel 100% better, that is just not what happens. The reality is that it takes a lot of time and energy that you need to put into yourself to actually fully recover from that experience, especially if you are very burnt out and stressed all the time. I've been out of my job for 5 weeks now, and I'm still dealing with a lot of the kind of symptoms that I had from burnout and stress. So that being said, I have 4 main tips for you regarding your recovery plan and just things to overall consider. The first one is set a timeline for your recovery. It's easy to say, I'm gonna give myself a break, I'm just gonna rest and recover, and then all of a sudden a few weeks have gone by and you feel the exact same. If you set a timeline and an actual plan for your recovery, you're much more likely to actually recover. It's not just about sitting around doing nothing, it's about truly working on yourself physically and mentally and emotionally to heal the issues that you had while in your job. My second tip is, after you quit your job, give yourself at least a full week to do nothing, to not worry about the plan, to not worry about the financials, to truly just sleep as much as you need to sleep and to just fully veg out and recover if that's what you need. That's what I did after I quit, and the biggest takeaway I had from this is that I was severely sleep deprived. I was able to sleep 12 to 14 hours at a time for that full week, and I just could not get enough sleep. So I definitely suggest you do this the first week after leaving your job. My third tip is to, after you've given yourself that week to not think about anything, to not plan anything, and to just literally veg out, then make a plan for your recovery. So your recovery might take more than a week, and it will take more than a week if you were severely burnt out and stressed. So make a plan. For me, that plan looked pretty simply like working on my sleep habits, trying to recover those, working on planning out what I want to do next and figuring out what I truly want to do with my life from here. And then lastly, slowly adding in gig work jobs that I could do every week to start to make some money, but I didn't want to fully jump back into another 40-hour-a-week thing. And that right there is actually why I didn't line up another job to start right after quitting my current one. It wasn't just because I wasn't even sure where I wanted to be, although that was a huge factor. I had no idea what job I even wanted next or what I wanted to do. But a bigger factor was the fact that I needed some time to recover and to slowly build back up to being able to, get work done for a period of time without getting burnt out so quick. And I think this takes a lot of time to do. And that brings me right into my fourth tip for you guys, which is to not push yourself so hard and so fast. When we're in our 9-to-5 jobs, it's really easy to constantly feel this pressure to keep going, to push and push and push and work as hard as you can, but that's the whole reason why you left, most likely. It's really easy to fall back into the same patterns that we were in with our jobs, which is this addiction to stress. And if you want to hear more about that concept, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm pretty interested in making a video about it. But in general, when we work these stressful jobs, we get this actual addiction to the dopamine and the serotonin and all the feelings that come from being stressed and then meeting a deadline, being stressed, meeting a deadline. And it's really hard to get yourself out of that. So the important thing here is to really work to not go back into that pattern and just keep doing the same exact thing that you were doing while you were in your job. And that is all I have for you guys in this video. I really hope it was helpful for you if you're debating leaving your 9-to-5 job and you're kind of struggling with how to financially prepare. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that everyone's situation is different and we all have different financial plans and levels of risk that we're willing to take. So consider that as well when you're making this decision. And if you have any specific questions, please DM me on Instagram. Probably said it before, but my DMs are always open and I'm happy to talk to you guys and maybe give a little advice if there's anything I can help out with specifically. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.